Well, and now for our main attraction, it's William Camersall and Madi Fisher. Take it away, you guys.
Awesome. So it is our pleasure to be here tonight. And just so for introductions, we are both from Scaled Agile. I'm a product manager. I work with a team there making SAFe collaborate. So in Scaled Agile, we make SAFe, which is a framework. You can go to scaledagileparamework.com. Check that out if you want. It's got a free knowledge base of how to scale and apply best practices in lean and agile thinking to an organization. So a great tool to check out, learn some new terms, get some ideas. But we also produce a tool called SAFe Collaborate. And I'm excited because it has been a wild ride for the last year with COVID. It's been amazing to see the transformations of people and how they change their styles of collaboration. And tonight, Madi and I are looking forward to sharing what we've seen, some things that we've learned along the way working with customers too, and to hear from you all. So it's going to be an active conversation. So product manager, I've also been an Agile coach, a Scrum Master, a developer. I love facilitation. I love collaboration. So I'm excited about tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, I am Madi Fisher. I am a Scrum Master and Master Facilitator, or at least that's what I think I am. I am the Scrum Master for the SAFe Collaborate team, as well as the Information and Technology team at Scaled Agile. I'm really happy to be here and excited to hear from you all tonight.
I can vouch for Madi. Other people call her that too. It's not just her. Okay. So yeah, as I said before, if you want to follow along, we're going to use this as our visuals so you can color along. We'll at the end, we'll have a chance to share your favorite page if you are coloring along. But what we wanted to talk about was how do we still maintain it being an expert collaborator, even if you're working at your kitchen table? Some of us still are. I only last week got my standing desk. I'm feeling on top of the world. But for a long time, I was sitting on a little tiny table there. And the reason why we thought this is a good time to reflect. So it's been a year since we've all been working remotely. And the light's at the end of the tunnel, but there's actually potentially a more interesting challenge coming up, which is hybrid work, where we might have people in person and we might have some people being remote. So we thought it'd be a great time to talk about how are we approaching collaboration remotely as we kind of continue to work remotely and switch to this new reality. What we saw in the beginning of COVID is that a lot of people were taking the ways that they were collaborating. And as they were like, oh my gosh, next week I'm working remotely. I guess I'm using teleconferencing. I guess I'm going to need to set up a shared document or something like that. What most people were doing is just translating the way they collaborated in person into a remote setting. So if in person I had everybody around one table working off of one whiteboard, then that's what I did when I went remote. And even a year later, we've started to see some shifts, but some people are still kind of in this route. Like COVID came fast, COVID came hard. We've all been stressed. Some of us, it's great to take a step back and think, is this still the best way? Am I taking the best advantage of remote collaboration? Because in a lot of ways, it could be better than physical collaboration. So we're hoping that tonight we're going to talk through kind of how we look at that so that you might have something right away that you can go apply and say, oh, I'm going to approach that collaboration session coming up differently. And you can start thinking about, as we get into hybrid working, how am I going to make sure that I'm involving those people who are going to be remote? How am I making sure that that experience I have across locations is working for everybody? Because for anybody who, before the pandemic, you may have been, facilitating a session or doing collaboration where most people were in an office, one person remote. And we all know it was always so hard to be that remote person. Hard to hear people. You couldn't see the screen. You couldn't see the whiteboard. You just always felt like a second, like seconds here, like not on the main table. You're kind of off on the side trying to catch up. So it's a good time to think about what have we learned here from remote collaboration that we should apply as we go back into the office, where we might have a blend of people being in person and out and remote. So I hope that is going to be valuable to you. So just to kick off the bat, we've got our light bulb page here, our first page in our book. So it's got the motto. I love it. Madi put it in there. Great artists steal. And so hopefully you're going to be able to steal from us. Hopefully we'll be able to steal from each other as we talk through some of these ideas. Madi, got anything to add?
Yeah, I think just as we go throughout this session, use this page to write down ideas that you hear from other people. And you can take those ideas and then implement them in your next amazing collaborative meeting. And this is really a space where we can all learn from each other, not just learning from William and myself. And, let's be innovative and think about we used to say remote first, but truly designing collaboration remotely first and thinking about how do we collaborate together. So with that, I think we can get into the next page, which is before my meeting. So the first thing I am going to talk about is planning. So you should be planning twice as much time as your meeting. So if your meeting is an hour, you should be spending 2 hours planning for that meeting. Let's talk about what is the purpose of that meeting. Make sure you have an agenda and time boxes. These are some like simple things to use. And with time boxes also comes timers, and making those timers visible to everybody in the room. So there are some tools like Safe Collaborate where there is a timer that is visible for all participants. It's really easy for participants to get lost in their thoughts or get lost in the conversation that they're having. And if they have that visual timer that they can see, it's easier for them to keep their focus. And you as a facilitator, it is easier for you to kind of say, hey guys, we're running out of time here. If we don't move to the next agenda item, we may not be meeting the purpose of this meeting. So really talking about using the time boxes, using the agenda and the purpose of your meetings with those timers. Another thing that we should be planning for is how do we want our participants to collaborate in this meeting? It isn't share my screen and take notes and people just raise their hand, but maybe using some collaborative facilitation like 1, 2, 4 all, or which we can talk a little bit more about in a few minutes about during the meeting. But just about making sure that we get people's voices heard. Another great thing is icebreakers. How do we plan those icebreakers ahead of time? How do we make sure that we are hearing everybody's voices in the very beginning of the meeting? Because that gets people's voices heard at the beginning, meaning they can speak up and feel more comfortable throughout your meeting. So if we're talking about icebreakers, I know I was just a part of a really great one today, which made me laugh, which I will share with you. But I also want to hear from you all. What have been some rock star icebreakers that have driven engagement throughout your meetings that you want to share with everybody? Now's your time to shine.
You know, one of our meetups, we had something planned but we had an incoming snowstorm. And then Nancy's like, well, instead of that, like, what was the worst snowstorm you were ever in? So it was relevant to the time, to the moment of the meeting. So we had everything planned, and I thought that was really cool. So it was just like grabbing something that's in the headline right before the meeting or something like that, and then making that part of it.
I've used either having the team put emojis in the chat about sort of like registering where they're at that day, like this is where I'm at. Also like levels of listening, like an emoji, like where they're at, just to kind of check in with people. But we also have had fun with gifts, like, you know, people like, you know, even just like the beginning of a retro, how do you think this iteration went? And then people just putting a GIF in there, and then they have to explain it. It could be really fun.
I love that one, because that's a great example of how an icebreaker that works remotely that you want to be able to do in person, right? Grabbing that quick emoji, grabbing that quick GIF, really fun, really engaging, gets everybody involved. So I love those.
I've been in a couple where we had a story that one person would start it, and I've seen 2 versions. One where you were only supposed to say 3 words. 3 was too few to actually, and then you had to let the next person speak. But the other version was you could say whatever you wanted, and you end with something like, and then, so that the next person could take it off on any tangent they wanted.
Yeah.
And do that in a breakout room with just a few people, like 4 or 5 maximum, so that you go around and take turns multiple times.
I feel like those experiences where you're creating a story sometimes turn into like building a bond with your team and this camaraderie, because you made up this funny story that everyone was laughing about. And then the next time you're changing your team name, that funny story comes up and you have this crazy funky team name that like brings you all together or something.
The
Those are
one
really
that I
fun.
was in that was the most interesting was I did one with 2 other people, and we were on 3 different continents. And somewhere in the story, we got to a point where I went, oh, "Where's my mask?" And we all laughed. It was fairly recent.
I still have those nightmares. I wake up, I'm like, I don't have a mask on. What's going on? I love the one about the story one as well. Maddie and I we've done this with other folks too. We talk about how icebreakers are a great way for a team to kind of practice some different thinking muscles. And that felt like a perfect one there to practice kind of improvisation, saying yes and to build off of people's ideas rather than saying no to everything. So that sounds like a great one to help people think and have that muscle memory of how they could riff off other people's ideas. Maddie, you teased us with one. What's your funny one?
Yeah.
Oh, yesterday we had one in SOS, which was share the song that is stuck in your head today. And we had some, and then what they did was they would go to YouTube and they would share the tab and they would play, 20 seconds of the song that was stuck in their head. And we had all these like hard rock, like punk rock songs. And then I turned on Brooks and Dunn. Took them back country style. So that was fun. But it just got everyone excited. And, you got to hear from like, what is stuck in someone's head? That is very different than what is your favorite song, right?
That's a great call out, by the way, we're talking a little bit about getting comfortable with the tools. Like we all had to learn our tools to work remotely right away. If you've never seen it before, you haven't tried it, figure out, see if the tool that you use for video conferencing can play music. So if you use Google Meet, you can, there's an option to say share a tab and you can play music that way. So as a facilitator, it's a great way to bring some fun, some energy, bring a soundtrack to your meetings, especially for that like time before a meeting, maybe hang out, make it feel like a little bit like a lounge. So it could be a fun thing to try out.
Can we do this? So we do that at our meetup in person, but we haven't been successful because we've been using Zoom. Are we missing something? Like, do you think we can do that in Zoom?
I don't know how to do it in Zoom, but it's worth checking out. The tools, something to think about. We all adapted really quickly to COVID. So did the tools we were using. So you may have had to learn a tool in that first month or two to get set up. These tools have added a lot of features over the last year. So it's always nice to take a little refresher. I think someone mentioned emoji reactions. I know Zoom was kind of pulling that up to me and like, hey, you can do emoji reactions to people while they're talking. So it could be good to check out what's going on with the tools that you're using. See if you're missing out. Google Meet's adding a lot. And Microsoft Teams has come a long way. Lots of good stuff out there.
I've been in Zoom meetings where they've had music in the background, but I don't know if they were just playing it through their microphone.
Was it
when you
choppy?
share?
Oh.
When you share, there's a checkbox that says to also share your sound on Zoom.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Default is off, obviously.
However, I have a caveat to that. There was a meetup I was in a few days ago where somebody was doing some kind of, I don't know, techno rock or something that had some kind of a high-pitched undertone that was literally giving me a headache. Now, maybe not everybody could hear it, but it was making me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be careful that it's not something that's going to be offensive to anybody.
Kind of related to that, and I see Dan posted something in the chat that I think is an interesting point. And whether you want to address it or not, he says, I have a difficult time imagining the engineers on my present team having patience with any of the icebreakers. I've run into that too, where sometimes folks are like, oh, here we go with the icebreakers, right?
Some things that we do. So one of the leaders of one of the teams I'm on, he also is like not about that. So what I do is I say, it's Friday fun day. We'll do it on Fridays, or sometimes we do it after a meeting. So if you want to go and you don't want to be a part of that, feel free to check out, and that's okay. No judgment. If you want to stay back and connect with your team members, we're going to do an icebreaker at the end, and feel free to stay behind and connect. So sometimes it's just adapting, and you have to know when, because I was doing icebreakers all the time. And then he was like, Maddie, seriously, cut it. This is driving me crazy. So it's just understanding like the right time in the audience.
Yeah. Good point.
Adapting.
I'd say too, a nice trick there that Maddie had in there is when I've usually worked with developers, I'm trying to do something fun. I say, I put a limit around it. Like, I'm only going to do this on Fridays, or we're going to try this 3 times and then we're going to retro about it to see if you liked it. I think making it like, here's the limit that I'm going to go with, making you feel uncomfortable for trying something new, can help everybody kind of be bought in a little more.
Definitely.
I like the idea of the silly hats thing, just, being the engineer and knowing how some of us are some days. You kind of can encourage everyone to kind of show up goofy on camera or in person, depending on what you're doing. And at least, because we've all got some dorky thing in the closet that we can, throw on top of our head. That at least gives you something to point at and, ask questions about, and say, hey, why'd you pick that weird thing? But also, it's kind of fun and everybody gets to do goofy stuff. So I think that one can definitely work out sometime.
It's helped a little bit with trying to get my team to have their camera on more often and realize it's okay that I can see that you're a real person and I can see your closet in the background or see your pet or someone wanders by. Or it also just helps with bringing a little humor in and let the team not be quiet professionals the whole time.
That's a great, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, another one I think worked really well that I've seen a couple of times now is somebody just starts the meeting by saying, we've all been in Zoom meetings all day. We're all exhausted. Let's just stand up and walk around and stretch for a minute. And you really are supposed to do that with Zoom. You're supposed to stop and take breaks more frequently than you do when you're face to face, just because it's a different energy that it requires to be engaged and stay engaged. And I think that's worked very effectively a few times.
Definitely. I think
This isn't necessarily an, go ahead, William.
Oh, okay. I was going to say to that point, I think as Maddie kind of were talking about how you prepare for a meeting, think about your breaks differently. For a lot of us are like, I'm just going to do an hour. I'm just in a 2-hour session. We're just going to go for it. And if you're using Google Calendar, they have the notion of a speedy meeting where everything's either 25 minutes or a 50-minute time box to give people that break between, get time to stretch. Or if you're in a culture where other people aren't doing that, maybe you want to plan into your agenda, we're going to start with 5 minutes of stretching or social time. Or for me, if I'm doing a 2-hour session, every 30 minutes, I'm asking people, hey, do we want to break? Taking 5-minute breaks. And if we're saying, no, we're going to pass break, I make sure we get the 10-minute break on the next hour. So it's an important aspect, I think, there to like keep people engaged. The getting up, stretching helps so much when collaborating remotely.
I think that's, I know Nancy has a practice of kind of, if it's an hour-long meeting, let's just make it a 45-minute meeting. And that kind of creates a sense of urgency, but it creates that breathing space as well in between those meetings, catching up on, responding to an email really quick, a quick little bio break, grabbing a coffee, something like that, before you move on to the next whatever. It's context switching kind of concept as well. This isn't necessarily an icebreaker, but during the holiday times, I did a way to engage people and get them on camera was we did a scavenger hunt, a virtual scavenger hunt. So I had, my really quiet people who normally they no video type of thing. They were excited. They turned on the video and they were like, what's going on? Like they wanted to be a part of it. So I used it just as like a way to just, team bonding type of thing. And just a way to kind of like let loose in a retro space. And you're not having to think about anything. You're not having to solve problems.
A fun way to make it for that too is, thinking about the tools we're using differently. You can join your conferencing from your phone. So if you join with your phone, then you can use your phone camera and be zooming around, checking out your mobile.
Oh yeah.
You can go wherever you want.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
To piggyback off the scavenger hunt idea, I think I heard you say it was a virtual scavenger hunt. So maybe they're still sitting at their desk and they're, finding things online. We did a scavenger hunt during PI planning in the very beginning as the icebreaker, which was, all right, they had 20 seconds, go find the book with the most pages in your house. Go find your favorite cooking utensil. go find your dog's stuffed animal. I don't know. And then everyone came back, and then we gave people the opportunity to share one of the items that they had found or to take a picture of all of them. And then people got to comment and created this, funny conversation about these weird objects that people had in their house. So the scavenger hunt is definitely a fun one.
Maddie, I think my guess is people who are coming probably have filled in this page by now. So should we head on to the next thing?
We should head on to the next thing. Let's talk about during the meeting.
Okay, cool. So during the meeting on this page here, so we're gonna turn over. I put a little sketch here of a bunch of hands reaching into a computer. And the reason I did that is one of the things that I regret at the beginning of this COVID was my go-to method was, hey, I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna take notes. You all just talk. I'm going to do all this stuff over here, all this bookkeeping for the collaboration and facilitation. And what I'm trying to do now is make sure that everybody is actively engaged and being able to contribute to whatever we're doing. So whether it's a shared document or a whiteboard space or whatever tool we're using, how can I make sure that everybody's doing things for themselves? Just as if we were in person, I wouldn't be writing down everybody's sticky notes for them. I would expect people to do their own sticky notes. How can I do that, get that same experience remotely? So some things that can help with that, making sure that you're thinking through as I'm preparing and during the meeting, like I have something that everybody else can follow along. And when it comes to action items, especially, I'm setting the expectation people write their own action items, because that way there's more accountability to it, right? If you write down your own action item rather than having me as your facilitator write it down for you, you're more likely to word that in what makes sense to you and feel a little more accountability to doing that. When it also, another thing to think about is we're talking about, it's not about translating from physical collaboration to virtual, because in a physical space, we're limited. We often have everybody together in one room. And I don't know if you miss these days, I do not, where I showed up with 8 people to a room with 7 chairs, and I had to go hunt down another chair. And then everybody was kind of forced to be part of one kind of channel of communication because we were all together in one room. But in the virtual collaboration, we can free ourselves from that limitation and use breakout rooms to split people up and even dynamically switch that along the way. So Maddie was mentioning 1, 2, 4 all as kind of one structure that you can do there. Imagine a collaboration where you're helping both introverts and extroverts be a part of the meeting, and you start with everybody kind of breakout room solo, or maybe even just quiet, like write down ideas, jot down ideas, do stuff solo, and then pair people up into breakout rooms, go from 1 to 2 people working together, and have them pair up and share ideas and refine them and pick the best of them. And then take 2 pairs and pair them together in a breakout room, get 4 people together, and then have them refine those ideas. And then you bring those best ideas back to everybody. So it's a chance for people to connect in smaller groups, feel more comfortable speaking, a chance to have a more exciting meeting, more chance rather than just all sitting around, quiet people being quiet, loud people being air hogs. No offense to air hogs, but we all know what happens. You can kind of split up. And there's a great website if you want to check it out. It's called Liberating Structures. If you're not familiar with it, it's free. There's a free mobile app. It's a free website. It's got all these great ideas for how you can run meetings differently. And a lot of them might have been daunting at first, because it's got people working in smaller groups, people kind of having some unique structures together. But I would suggest checking out a website like that and looking at like, what are some options I could have where I could use breakout groups to make it so that my collaboration isn't just everybody all together all the time. Could I split people up into troikas, groups of 3, where they could work together on something and kind of have some smaller collaboration space together. And as we talked about tools getting better, the tools at the beginning of COVID, breakout groups were hard. Not even every tool had that, but now they're a lot easier to work with. So that's something I really recommend checking out. I would love to hear, is anybody using breakout groups in your collaborations? Any kind of stories or great experiences you've been having with breakout groups that might inspire other people?
For the most part, they seem to work fine. I mean, people enjoy them.
How do you use them, Nancy?
We use them. We use them a lot for program retros, where we, will diverge, converge, and put folks together. We've also done some trainings recently where we have folks from different teams, multiple teams attending trainings, but folks from different teams work together. And so they can compare experiences, well, on my team, we do this, and on our team, we do this. So Works really well.
Nice. How about other folks? Anybody's been experimenting with breakouts or using them?
I've been hesitant to try breakout groups with my team because we have a mix of like, so we'll have our retrospectives, and on a team of 8, we'll have 3 or 4 people that are talkative and collaborative, but I'm worried about, I would love to draw my quiet people, my introverts in more and get their feedback. And I've thought about using breakout rooms for that, but I don't know if I put some of them together, I'm worried they just won't talk to each other and they still won't engage. But if I pair them with people who are more talkative, the conversation will just get dominated.
Well, there's only one way to find out sometimes. Just try it.
And
So how it goes.
also, the nice thing about if you're using 1, 2, 4 all, if you have them, if you're still in the big meeting and you give everybody the prompt and you have the individuals write down their items. So those quiet people, the introverts are writing down what their items are to answer the prompt. And then when you go into the breakout rooms, their prompt is to share their ideas, see if there's any affinity map, any like common ideas, come up with the best idea between the 2 of you and bring it to the group of 4. So that way their voice is still being heard. You're kind of quote unquote forcing them to talk, or at least to share their ideas with others. So you could try that in the breakout rooms.
I think
That may be the feedback I need. That may be what I have to do. Ultimately, I've avoided it because I have one member who I've been very hesitant to try and do anything that would pressure him into talking, but I may need to try something like 1, 2, 4 all. That's an interesting idea.
I think it's hard because
Dan put something in the chat. I don't know if you guys see that. I think this is a pretty common issue.
Yeah, about people turning on cameras, getting people to turn on their cameras. It'd be challenging.
I've actually turned on the camera, like here I am. It's 4:30 in the morning, no makeup. Here I am, guys. So I mean, I've done that, but any other suggestions?
Along those lines, a model that I've picked up along the way from someone was don't apologize for working from home. Like, we all have rough situations. We're all working in weird places. Maybe that helps. Maybe it doesn't.
So
go ahead.
William, in line to this, there was this is Vishal from California, Southern California, Irvine. There was a post today on LinkedIn. It was showing the Ireland president along with his pet dog, and he was giving a speech. And at the bottom, it was written that when a president is not shying away from respecting his work from home environment, then we should not, because employers are not bringing your pets, your family, your work from home environment on payroll. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Something that we've done that actually worked surprisingly well. I was a little bit surprised. During PI planning, was it PI planning or one of our events? Anyway, we made it explicit. We said, if you are able to be engaged in this meeting, please turn your camera on. And if you then turn your camera off at any point, we'll understand that you're not available. We'll just make that assumption. And we just stated that up front.
That's a slippery slope, at least with some of the groups that I've worked with.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Sherry. Yeah, you get your 5 of 14 team members that are always engaged. You break them out into rooms, and they're still the only 5 who are participating. You come back out, you go into the rooms to check on, see what people are doing, and it's always the same 5 people who are participating, and it's like, that's such a challenge just to get those others to participate.
Well,
The other thing,
I want to try this out. This is something I recently learned, and because I'm like on information overload with like I love to learn things. I cannot quote where I got this from. I apologize for not being able to source it, but I watched something, it was clearly something online, and they talked about having a designated Yoda. And what that means is I'm going to designate 1 or 2 people in this meeting to be the Yoda. And we're going to defer to you at some point and ask you to ask the group, like, what are we not talking about here? What are we missing? And it's a way to help people listen more. They're a little bit more engaged if you kind of make them the champion Yoda.
I love it. Like that another way to think about, like, that permission to kind of call out the elephant in the room.
Yes, but it commits them more to the to what's going on in this meeting.
I like it. Back to the topic of cameras. One other thing you can try, definitely depends on your team, depends on how they are, but it can help to kind of make that connection to what it means for the rest of the team when you have your camera off. So by the cameras being off, that impacts me. And again, we can use I statements here. This impacts me because I can't see if you're engaged. I can't adapt to how you might be feeling. And ultimately that makes it harder for us to achieve our business outcomes. Now, of course, that's going very straight to kind of, what it means for business, but it sounded like some people have very professional focused people who are at work to achieve outcomes. So it could be an interesting way to talk about how it impedes our productivity if our cameras are off.
But it can impede your productivity if people can't hear, because if I turn my camera on, my sound goes really bad. Sure. And I've had times where I've been in a meeting where we had to tell the presenter to turn their camera off because they were freezing constantly because they were in an area with low bandwidth. And if you're dealing with global teams, that happens even more.
Absolutely. Yep. And so, yep. A great call out there. Always make sure you understand what's the situation, where are people working from, where are they connecting from, what might be some of those challenges, just like you'd want to know if people have challenges with working in a workspace together, what might be some of those challenges they're having working digitally, and accommodate them if you need to.
One thing to also try is when we first went remote, and then every quarter after that, we go back and we look at our working agreements, and we adjusted our working agreements to say when we are remote, we'll be on camera unless we have something going on. So it's easy to refer back to your working agreements to say, hey, are we in violation of these working agreements? What are we doing that we need to adapt? Or me personally, if I see a team member with their camera off for 1, 2, 3 days, I'll reach out to them individually and say, hey, is everything okay? And then I find out something about their personal life or something that isn't allowing them to be on camera, like, oh, I'm having a really tough time, or blah, 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 blah. So also being interested and just checking in on team members if you do have that all on camera culture and you do see someone off camera. So that can also be a little trick. Use those working agreements also.
So other things here, thinking about what do we do during a meeting and kind of what we could be doing to help with our remote collaboration is think about in person. We might often have used something like dot voting to kind of get people to quickly, consolidate around an idea, help us move forward through decision making, to get visual representation of that consensus so that we can build that together as a facilitator. So it could be a great thing to think about with the tool set that you have. How can you make the most of a tool like dot voting to help kind of people, especially if we said, if you have people who are louder, some people are quieter, asking everybody to place a dot vote gives them that autonomy, that agency to go voice their opinion, and can also be a very fast way to kind of keep a meeting going forward. So that's another one where if you're using a graphical whiteboard, you might have an ability to bring in like little circles, dots, literally dot voting. But even better could be too, think about, is there a way for people to do that anonymously? And that's a kind of a cool thing some tools have where you can kind of do anonymous dot voting. So people also, you can't do that physically. Everybody sees everybody's dot, but in a virtual setting, there is more opportunity to have some ability for people to have a little more, freedom in how they vote, a little more confidence that they know they won't be judged for voicing their opinion. So check those out. It might be worth checking out the tools that you've got and seeing, what are some of those ability that you might have to gain that consensus through dot voting. Maddie, what am I missing? What else? What do you like to do during a meeting? Kind of what are some of those things that you're looking for? On our sheet, on the coloring book, we had it there at the top, my collaboration cheat sheet. Like, what are those things kind of you're looking for in a meeting when it's going on to make sure everything's going smoothly? What are you on the lookout for?
Mostly I'm looking for engagement. And I know we've kind of talked about that a little bit, but how do we get everyone's voices heard? Or how do we drive towards consensus with everyone's opinions? And in terms of consensus, I think it's important to use those facilitation tools like the Roman vote or the fist of five, and figuring out are we all agreeing on this is the path forward? I think the consensus, whichever way you choose, and making sure that everyone is aligned and engaged towards that decision. Because if you say, here's the decision we're moving forward with, fist of five, 1, I don't feel comfortable with this. 2, I have some questions before I can agree. 3, I can live with and support this. 4, this is a great idea, let's do it. And 5, this is the best plan ever, we should do this every time. If someone throws a 1 or a 2, it's very easy for them to ask that question and say, well, I'm uncertain about this one part of the plan, or I'm uncertain about this one decision that we've made. We spend 5 minutes talking about it. And did that help them move to a 3 so that we have buy-in and consensus moving forward? So I think during a meeting, I think those consensus facilitation tools are really key. Yeah. Do you guys use those?
I can see how you do fist of five with video, but I'm not sure how you actually do dot voting. Do you have software or a package that you recommend?
You can do it on lots of tools. So if you're using even a Word doc, you have people add, or a shared document space, you have people add an asterisk. If you're using kind of visual space, you can draw circles, have everybody kind of make a comment. So it might depend on kind of what tools you're using. But yeah, you should be pretty creative. Or I think someone mentioned emojis or chat on the side. Have everybody here. This is a nice one too for planning poker. For folks, if you don't have a good tool for planning poker yet for estimating, you can use chat and say, okay, everybody, type in what you're going to do. Don't hit enter yet. 3, 2, 1. Everybody hit enter, and then everybody sees it all at once, so nobody's biased by what other people are doing. So some different ways you can do it.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the beginning, I think before I had certain tools, I was just using either put your initials next to the item you want to vote for, or put a plus sign or a dollar sign. And then the dollar sign became something that we always used. And then it became some inside joke. I don't know. So use those things at the top of your keyboard.
Maddie, you're
I just had an idea. Go ahead. Well, I just had an idea because I'm an animal weirdo and I love all animals. And so maybe a fun game you could play during your meetings is I Spy.
Oh, you must be looking at my giant bookshelf behind me.
Well, I saw the puppy. I saw the puppy behind you and I commented on Kristen's pup. So, like that might be a fun thing. Like, just constantly, I spy this, I spy that. I mean, it might be taking away from the meeting, but people will have their videos on, so.
I did actually used to hide certain things in this bookshelf and see if people would notice. And they actually did. There was like a Mickey Mouse thing at one point, and then there was something else. So that is a good idea, and one that I've used.
Maddie, while you were talking, I was reminded of a story, a success that one of our Scrum Masters had at Scaled Agile. We've been talking about some people being loud, some people being quiet. What he did is during a meeting, he actually, and this is easier to do when you're remote, recorded how much airtime everybody had. And he presented the team afterwards with a pie chart of how much time every person spent speaking. And so this is for a sales team, data-driven. If you're working with developers, it might be data-driven as well. But there's something that was quite visceral about seeing it in a pie chart about who's not getting a chance to talk. And he said he had great success with that, kind of leading to team behavior changes and calling out on those quiet people and helping them have a voice.
And then having some really honest conversations with maybe the people that were taking up, 3/4 of the pie chart. Awesome. Should we talk about or William, do you have anything else to add for during the meeting?
I think you got it. Let's talk about post meeting.
All right, so we're going to move to the next page full of flowers and a beautiful pot that William drew for us there. So before you end your meeting, it is important to review the actions that you all have agreed upon. So the first thing is, if you're having people write their own actions, have them share what their action is. So what is the action? When do they want to do it by? And how do they want to communicate that that action is done? If
Can I
you're
ask a
writing,
question
oh, sure.
about that? Because when I meant to ask this earlier when William said this, where are they writing this? So William, you talked about accountability, they're probably more accountable if they're taking their own action items. My thought is if they're somebody they have it in front of them, or is there like a Google Doc so everyone can see that? Like, is it shared? So that was my question.
Google Doc. Yep.
Okay.
And what I've started to do to force people to get in that mindset is I won't share my screen. I'll be like, there's a link to the Google Doc, and I'll either say, I want to be able to see all your faces, so please bring it up for yourselves, or say, I'm having trouble with, maybe I'll make it up. I'm having trouble with my bandwidth. I can't share right now.
Mm-hmm.
But try to encourage people, because if they're instead of looking at your screen where they can't type, but they get all the information, if they have to instead see it in a space where they have the agency to work with it, that kind of helps remove one barrier, one of those hurdles to getting people to write their own notes or put in their own thoughts. So might be Google, might be a whiteboard, might be different stuff.
Yeah, it also works in Slack or one of those where you could create a thread, like actions for this meeting here, thread your actions below. And that way it's in a place where everyone can go back to. So that's a good place where you can have people write their own actions. So thank you for the question. So we want to review the actions. Who's going to do them? When are they going to do them by? And how they want to communicate that action back. And then at the end, I take all the actions and I either email them out to all the participants that were in the meeting, or I post them in Slack. If I post them in Slack, I always mention the people that are taking those actions. And I always put fun emojis in, because who doesn't want to see fun emojis when people have to take actions? So there's going to be a boom. There's going to be some finger pointing towards the actions that people are going to take. I really like asking the question, how do you want to follow up on these actions? Because you may want them to follow up a certain way, but that may not be the way that they want to follow up. So if you ask the group, how do we want to follow up on these? It could be, hey, we want to schedule a 15-minute meeting in 2 weeks to review these actions. Or it may be asynchronous, where we want to thread our actions are complete, or send out the document that we had to fill out. In terms of me as a facilitator, I know that I'm taking a lot of actions. Sometimes I don't want to take those actions, but I have to take them. And some tools that I have used that have really helped me are Google Tasks. Because I know that if I write it in my notebook and I'm 3 pages later for an action I was supposed to take earlier, that I'm going to lose it. So if I use Google Tasks, I can easily see it in one place. Also, there's a tool, Google plugin called Momentum. And that is a fun tool that you can type in what your priority is for the day. And then you also have a to-do at the bottom where you can easily just tag off those 3 actions that you have. Also, we talked about speedy meetings earlier, and that 5 minutes or that 15 or 10 minutes that you have, thank you, Lyle, for that, fun emojis. If you have that time built into your agenda, that's a really great time to get those like quick actions done. Like, oh, I just needed to schedule this, hour-long meeting with 4 people. So also it's actually helping you to schedule those shorter meetings and give people a break. And so those actions don't just keep piling up on you. Are there any other tools that you guys use to help track actions that you guys are taking during the day? What have you found to be successful?
I have one group who has a shared collaborative agenda, and the very first thing on the page is like a link to our action items from that meeting. And so people will put it in like from this day, this is what I agreed to do. And any details. And that's helpful because everyone has access to it.
Nice.
Depending what the tool is, I'll actually put it in as a story or a spike. Then I don't have to remind them.
There we go.
I usually jot down the minutes of meetings and broadcast them after the meeting, and then save them on Confluence where everybody can see them.
Here's another fun trick. When I send out some of my actions for certain meetings, if the list is long, I'll sometimes put some Easter eggs in there. So I will put like a line item for a link to a YouTube video, or I'll put in, you know, at the very bottom, if you read this far, click this link and send me a picture of a goat. You know, just a way to kind of like know that if you send something out, people are going to read it because they want to find that like weird little thing that's going to bring them a little bit of joy in the middle of the day. So you could try something like that too, which is a little bit silly, but
a read receipt.
Exactly.
Yeah. Delivered by goat.
Exactly. Awesome. Also think about at the end of your meeting, how you want people to collaborate after. So is there a way that they can collaborate asynchronously, or setting up a time for the team to connect after that meeting is over based on maybe the actions that you have? The last and most important thing, and maybe this is more important when you have larger chunks of work, but is to celebrate the work and the time that you guys spent doing that work. So if it's at the end of a really busy iteration where you just release some crazy big thing and you spent, you know, 3 months or 4 weeks, celebrate that win. You know, we made t-shirts for a really big feature that we developed, and we sent all the t-shirts out. We made a coffee cup for some people. I think it's just either way, even if it's just you guys getting together for like a quick game of Among Us or something, just a way to connect and celebrate that, hey, we did this thing, we rocked the socks off of it, and it's like a pause, press pause, and then move forward. William, what would you add to that?
I think you did a great job there, but I especially like the one about thinking about the collaboration space. For me, when I'm thinking through my remote collaboration, it's almost like the document or the space that we're using to collaborate, how is that going to live on? Because it's almost like a meeting is a snapshot in time where we're getting together to collaborate, but there's this longer story that I want to make sure goes on beyond that, because maybe we'll have a follow-up meeting, or maybe it's going to be a living document that we're going to use in the future. So like, how am I creating the space where people can reference this, use it for actions, kind of come back to it, so that I mean, for me at least, at the beginning, I made so many different Google Docs that is just my drive's a mess. But how can I like start centralizing those things and kind of make it more of a shared space that people can use?
Awesome. I think we're good. Move to the next section.
Sure. Well, the next one was actually, I mean, I've been loving the conversation. We're gonna have more time for conversation. But just as you were thinking about it, we had this thing, closing collaboration is key. And one of the reasons why we said this at the beginning, but hopefully now that we've talked about it, kind of think it through other things you've been hearing today. COVID hit us fast, unexpectedly, but there's another transition coming up that we can start preparing for, and that's hybrid working, where we're going to have more people wanting to work from home or taking that as their new way that they work. You're going to have some people who want to come into the office. And as a facilitator, we're going to have to start navigating that space of how do we work with people, some people being together, some people being remote. So think through, like, what are some of those things that you've been learning over this year? What are some things that you've just learned from other folks? And we're going to have some more time to chat, things that you could still learn and ask questions about that can help you start building that behavior as a team while everybody's a remote, so that you can be successful when you're in the hybrid. Because I think hybrid's actually harder than remote. When you've got some people together, they're going to form a close bond. They have a much higher bandwidth communication where they can see body gestures, they can smell each other. I don't know the last time I smelled a coworker, but it happens. Where you can kind of have that closer connection. So how do you make sure that those people who are remote are still part of it? And maybe it's everybody's going to have their laptops open, even if they're in person, and everybody's collaborating together remotely. That could be true. That might be one way to go about it. Or I might be thinking about some of these ways. How do I structure my meetings a little differently? So maybe the people in person do a little breakout while the remote people do a breakout, and then we come back and we share together. Just a good time to start thinking about that. How is this going to look for us as facilitators, and how can we start preparing for that and learning and honing our skills before that happens? So, Matt, anything you wanted to add to that?
I think it's funny that we used to have to book several rooms if we had a large breakout or a large group of people, because then we were pairing people that were in the room with people that were remote, but they couldn't hear because you're on a laptop. So those are the types of things we're going to have to be thinking about as we move back to being hybrid. Is if we plan all the remote people, are there still going to need to be people that we meet that are in those breakout rooms that are in person and remote? And how do we plan for that? So I think it's just it's a really important crazy thing that we have to think about, but one that is going to be a fun challenge.
For me, it was even happening before COVID, because you'd have people in the same building that they'd want to just stay at their desk. They didn't feel like they had to come to the room. So you may be there with one or two people and then everybody else. So that was kind of a weird feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And what's the nice thing is now that we all have a lot more empathy for what it's like to work remotely, we've all built up skills, built up tools. So yeah, I mean, to the point, hopefully we can leave behind some of those challenges that we had before with remote folks.
But I've worked with teams that were partially remote for like 20 years. I mean, because if you're working with global companies or even with national companies and the team is geographically distributed, you're not all in the same room. In one company where I worked, where there were a lot of meetings with offshore teams, we'd be getting up for meetings at 6 a.m. Well, those you do before you get ready to go into the office. But if I was in a meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the local people were not in the conference room with me. They were in their cars driving home. So even when the team is theoretically co-located or part of the team that's theoretically co-located, that doesn't mean you're going to get them in the room.
Yep.
And I don't think it interfered with our ability.
I think that's what we're finding out.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I don't know whether this was.
Okay.
I was going to say, I don't know whether this was said or not, but because I got distracted a few times. Sorry. But I remember at Return Path, we had those big live, the conference rooms where you would share the picture of each conference room, and there was these microphones, right? Mm-hmm. And that really was never very effective. And at some point, I think once we turned to Agile, and I guess I was the Scrum Master for the marketing team, we would get in this room, and I would say, all right, we are standing up, but everybody has to have their computer. So everybody had to be online so that the people that weren't in the same office were all equally distanced, and we're all equally in the same boat compared to the people that are remote were always at a disadvantage, because I spent many, many years remote in a disadvantaged situation. And half the time you're like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And half the time you didn't hear them. And I don't even want to ask again. I'm such a pest. So I think it was really important that everybody had their own computer, even if they're sitting in the same room together, so that everybody's in the same, equal ground.
Definitely. So one thing that, because we'll have time, I think, for open Q&A here and conversation, but think about what are your actions. It's always nice for a meetup or any session to think about what are those actions that you're taking. We'd love, if you want to just take a moment to jot down kind of what are some things you heard from others, or what are some of those burning questions you still have for us as we move into the end here. And we'd love to hear for anybody, like, what are your actions? Well, get some inspiration from each other. What's something you're going to try? What's something you're going to do differently? What's a great idea that you picked up tonight? We'd love to hear it. So maybe take a couple months, or if you don't have the coloring book, just take a Post-it note. What's the one thing you're going to do differently tomorrow or next week? Make a commitment. Try something different. But take a moment for that, and then we'd love to hear what's your top action item. One thing that we didn't mention along the way that I've had to learn being remote is that silence feels twice as awkward. Way to remote, but it's important to let that happen sometimes. We want a chance to think, especially if you ask a question and some people need time to think about it before they answer. But hopefully that's enough to jot down an action number 2. Does anybody have one they want to share? I see some coming in the chat too. But what's an action someone's going to try to take?
I can't believe I hadn't used breakout rooms for 1-2-4-all, and so I'm definitely going to do that.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, check out, and I put the link there in the chat as well. Check out all the other great things on there. The Troika stuff's amazing as well. Lots of good ways to think differently rather than everybody together in one big chat.
I really liked your suggestion about not sharing my screen. So just having everybody get into the doc, whatever tool we're working in, whatever we're doing, everybody can get in there on their own, and I'm not sharing. I like that.
I'm totally doing the Easter eggs in the long emails, and really any.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like the funny hats. I think that's a great idea. I'm going to add that to not just wear it during a Zoom, but during a stand-up kind of thing.
Yeah.
We do virtual stand-ups. We do it in Slack. We're a very strange company. We're not really, it's not a development. It's just long story, but this would be priceless. When I ask the 3 stand-up questions, and I'll ask the 4th question, which is a picture of you in a funny hat, so these are really good ideas.
And time for open Q&A too. So who's got a burning question or something they want to talk about? Who's got a lot of awesome people here, a great group of facilitators here working through this all together as well. So great time to get feedback or get thoughts on something that's challenging you.
Well, I didn't necessarily want, to make this like a sales pitch, but I just learned about this collaboration tool that SAFE has. And so I shared a link in the chat, and I wasn't sure if that was like the appropriate place or the best place to learn more about it, but can you briefly tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Maddie, do you want to do it or you want me to do it?
It's an online collaboration tool. Lyle can also do it because Lyle is here, who's one of our developers. Whoop, whoop, Lyle. So it's an online collaboration tool. You can, man, how do you describe it? I really should practice this more.
Well, it's kind of what we're doing is we're designing it to be really custom made for some of those SAFE events. It's got general stuff too. You can do lean coffee, you can do all types of events in there. But we also want to make sure you can do stuff like Roam boards, risk management, you can value stream mapping in there. So if you are SAFE certified, you've got a login to community.scaledagile.com where you can go check it out there. You can go to under implement in the tool, you can go to in the website, you can go to implement collaborate and you can go check it out. You can also reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about it. As a product manager, I always love to talk to people who are thinking about how ways to collaborate better. So you can just hit me up and I'll help you out too. But it's kind of included with being SAFE certified for those of you who are.
I will definitely look for that, and I will definitely track you down, William.
All right, sounds good. William.cameracell@scaledagile.com. We realized one of the things without sharing slides is we don't have that slide that has our contact details. So my first name dot last name @scaledagile.com. How about for other folks? You got a challenge or something that's you've been struggling with that you want to get some thoughts and ideas on?
I think you hit it on the collaboration tools. We use Microsoft Teams with Jira. I'm doing Trello, and I think it's just trying to get a good mix of getting people engaged. I really like being able to use the collaborative. We don't do the collaborative tools where people update their own stuff, and I think that'd probably make a huge difference. That's something I'm going to look into.
Yeah, I think Teams has some team board kind of concepts in there built.
Yeah, they do have a whiteboard, and I haven't really tried that or the other collaboration, so I think I'll check that out.
Cool. Yeah, so it's general thing too. That's another feature that a lot of these tools have been adding is even some packages of Zoom have it. Google Meet's got it. if just spur of the moment, you're wanting to kind of pull up a whiteboard, a lot of them have that built in, like Google calls it a jam board. Although I think they might just rebranded it. I'll have to check. But you can just like pull those things up to do a little visual collaboration.
So I'm always interested in lessons learned. So is there any kind of story that comes to mind that you'd want to share out?
I mean, I've definitely failed at just going into a meeting thinking that we could come to an agreement on something and not having an agenda. I have a purpose, but I don't have an agenda with time boxes or a way for us to work through that. So it just turns into an open discussion, and a 25-minute open discussion can just lead to going around and around and around. So I think that was my biggest learning, and even one that happened today, as I wasn't leading it, but I was a part of it. William was a part of that meeting also. And if you spend the time to make sure that you can get to the outcome of the meeting and planning for it, then that meeting is going to be successful. If you're having an open discussion, I think you have a far lesser chance of getting the outcome that you're looking for. So that's one of my lessons learned, and one that still needs practicing.
The plus on that one, something I picked up from someone else I'm trying to use, is kind of open up that meeting with a statement like, we're going to be successful over the next 25 minutes together if we achieve X or if we achieve Y. Like set that clear like goal. Here's what we're trying to do. Time box, trying to go. It's a game, right? We're trying to get this done. We're going to try to make a decision. And if you are, teams need space for open discussion, right? That's something that we kind of missed from being physically together, is that we don't have those little chats. I love using Lean Coffee. So if you've never done Lean Coffee, suggest checking out. Basically, you can have your whole team like kind of just jot down things they want to talk about. If you've got that, vote for which is the most popular one people talk about, and you set a 7-minute time box. You talk, or 5-minute time box even. You talk about it. At the end of it, Roman vote. Do we keep talking about this, or do we go on to the next topic? And that kind of gives that ability to have open conversations, but also keeps things moving. So like for our product management team, we do about an hour of Lean Coffee every week, just because there's all these tactical things that come up, and it just kind of helps us not have one urgent issue wipe out the rest. We can kind of hit a variety of issues.
So with using Lean Coffee like that, do you find it more effective to do, you mentioned you have an hour every week, or to do smaller sessions spread through the week?
I usually do the largest. There is a little bit of setup for a Lean Coffee. Like you want to have the people who are able to make it that day vote and kind of pick for what they want to do. So I mean, when you're in the groove, maybe that takes 5 minutes to get through. So you do have a little bit of if you were to spread it out, you'd kind of be wasting that every time. So I usually try to make it a little bit of a bigger session. People also generally get excited once they get into it. And it helps from like, if your issue is number 3, hey, we're going to get to the third thing. Whereas if they're smaller and you only do one, it's hard to do. Could also be a good one for those doing stand-ups or meet afters. Do time boxes there, start with the most important meet after 5 minutes. Do we keep talking? Do we pass on to the next one just to keep it moving? How about other folks? Any other questions, thoughts?
What about situations where maybe a meeting's not the answer, where a decision needs to be made, but rather than getting 10 people for a meeting in 2 days, can we get 4 to get on a Zoom right now, try to come to an idea, and then see if everybody's okay with it? Or even start a thread, and can we have everybody talk over the net, even if we have a decision tomorrow, rather than waiting 2 or 3 days to get everybody on Zoom? How do you try and encourage that behavior rather than if everybody's in the office, the instinct is, can I get everybody into one meeting room? But being remote really gives us a lot more opportunity to use asynchronous communication.
I think if there's a way that you can get a subset of people to come up with ideas and then share those ideas out, and get people, maybe the 6 other people that weren't able to be a part of that. You're sharing the 4 ideas or the 4 people's ideas. And then you can either set them out via email and say, hey, here's some ideas. Which do you think are the thing that we should move forward with? Or then schedule the meeting for the next week. But that way you're not wasting the time, right? You've narrowed it down some. You could also just try doing it asynchronously via some type of collaboration tool. Like, hey, today, everybody put in their ideas. Tomorrow, we're going to do this step. The next day, we're going to do this step. And by the end of the week, we'll have our decision without meeting at all. So go ahead.
Does anybody have suggestions for a really good tool with that? Because unfortunately with my company, we have to go through a somewhat painful procurement and approval process. And if I had an idea of a tool that was really good, it would be easier than trying to evaluate multiple tools.
Do you have, I mean, even like, are you guys able to use Google Slides?
If people think that's an effective way to do, we could try, we have Google Docs and that might work. I just didn't know if anybody had something that they knew was phenomenal.
Say collaborate. Just kidding. Do you guys have any awesome tools?
For collaborating on ideas?
Asynchronously, yeah.
We tried using Mural. We just got it. So Mural, you have to do a lot to prepare it, but you can, add instructions. You don't need to it can be asynchronous. And they do examples like you can create a virtual board for someone. Let's say someone's retiring, you create a virtual board and you just have that link. Anyone can log in using that link. You don't have to be online. That can be done asynchronous. So as long as you have, the template laid out with instructions on pull the sticky, put it in XYZ, then you can do that asynchronously. But you can also try, I think Google has an app called Jamboard. Similarly, you can probably just put out a template and then send out the link with instructions. People can go online, fill it out. They do that with like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade classrooms. My kid is using Jamboard in her class.
And Maddie, I think that's a good suggestion, because I know I was going to ask about time box meetings to where people show up on time and really can't stay over beyond when the meeting is scheduled. And if there's certain things that you really have to get done, or you're saying, well, follow up and let people do this at the end of the meeting or after, a lot of times they're gone. So some of those ideas are good to see if you need to kind of continue to keep the traction going.
Definitely. And in those time box sections, if you get off topic and you say, hey, this thing is off topic, sounds like we really need to talk about it. Don't forget about the parking lot. That thing doesn't go away because we're remote. We still have a parking lot. We just don't see it on a big white flip chart in the corner.
Matt and I are smiling because we're both using the same technique. There's we'll leave you one last one. It's called 10 seconds of awkward silence. So silence isn't bad. In fact, I appreciate Chris had a great question there that sparked more conversation before there was this awkward silence. And Chris got it right at the buzzer when I was going to move on to the next thing, but he gave a great question, kept us going forward, some great conversation. So I was giving another 10 seconds of silence. They're always nice to give people a chance to think. Some people are still mulling things over. It's always good to have a chance for that to come up before you kind of adjourn a session or move on to the next thing. But the next thing I would love to do, if anybody colored and you're feeling proud and brave, we would love to see your favorite coloring sheet. What was your favorite page of the coloring book that you filled in? If anybody's feeling up for it. This is an experiment by Maddie and I to try a coloring book.
I didn't finish though.
Oh, that's okay. What's your favorite page?
Got that, and then I have that a little bit. It's not a lot.
That looks great.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Nicole, I saw some from yours.
Ooh.
I think Nancy had better crayons than I did.
Oh, look at that one.
That looks good.
What do you do if you're artistically challenged?
You do it anyway.
Doodle. Cool.
I like that I used the middle pages to add other notes when I was bleeding over, so that was great.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Idea. Altogether, I thought this was super fun, so thanks.
You're welcome. Well, thank all of you for joining. And I think we're gonna kick back over to Nancy Marie to close us out. But we enjoyed the conversation. Maddie and I think mission accomplished. We hope you learned something. We learned a lot from the conversation. I love meetups. It's a great chance to connect. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Next slide.
Yeah, thank you so much, William and Maddie, for joining us and sharing this. This is really nice when you get a meetup. Presentations are great and you learn so much. And then there's the other side, especially of all of us, being on Zoom calls all day. This is just great to have that interaction and learn from each other. So what a great style. So we really appreciate that. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the coloring book. That was really cool. And I'll post the FAQ maybe on the meetup page, just so people have it in case they want additional information. Some of the links that you shared, William and Maddie, I threw in my FAQ really fast, like fun emojis and the tools and things like that. So I just kind of add to that FAQ so that other people, like in the future, can still gleam onto a couple of cool tools. So really appreciate you guys joining us. So thank you.